So hi everyone, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's amazing to see such interest for a current problem, burnout. I'm Nănuți. I'm a senior software engineer at Chainalysis. I have over 12 years of professional experience and I went through burnout. And this got me thinking about team health the same way we think about systems health. We treat burnout like a people problem, but in reality, it's a system design failure. And I want to start this with a question. Is your team's health as observable as your software? I'm not expecting an answer here, but let's think about it for a minute. We have real-time dashboards for our services. We track CPU usage, we track LLMs tokens, we look at our services availability, but we are not giving the same importance to the humans who are actually building that code. And we'll see also why this is important for businesses as well to invest in burnout prevention. We'll also go through some mechanisms that are probably familiar to most of us, but we fail to apply them to alleviate teams' pressure. And most of the time, our monitoring is essentially just waiting for the quit signal. So first, let's align on what the system under study is. And we have here our team, which is handling a bunch of input streams. Is handling requests from stakeholders, is handling bugs from users, is handling the on-call incidents, and it's on a constant feedback loop with whichever observability tooling it has in place. And of course, as all these requests may increase and all these input streams produce more data, this will put more pressure on our team, which in time will lead to exhaust that translates directly into technical debt. But we don't necessarily observe that. That may be sometimes a missed outcome, together with the actual team pressure that the members of the team are experiencing, because they are still shipping software and maybe they are meeting deadlines, and that translates in business value. So we don't look further than that. But what we've actually built is a high throughput system without human safety margins. And of course, you could come to me and say, okay, hey, Diana, but why would an employer care about this? Well, the answer is short. And the data is here. So Mental Health UK, in a study published this year, mentioned that 9 in 10 adults in the UK are actually suffering from chronic workplace stress. So this is no longer an exception. And furthermore, neurodivergent people that we learned about from Diana's talk yesterday face higher burnout due to the pressure of adapting to neurotypical environments because the business environments are not yet designed for them. And AI adoption just adds on top of that, just makes things worse. And you will have some early signals, you will see some productivity loss, you will see some disengagement, you will see people taking leave or maybe even canceling leave when they actually need it. You would see people going on sick leave. All of these are costs that the company incurs. And to add more numbers to it, Harvard Business Review published an article about the AI brain fry, which essentially is the entire overwhelm and overload that all the context switching and all the information that we need to review from all the AI tooling is producing to our brains. And that leads directly to poor decision making. And while we don't have new numbers from 2026 on the cost of that, poor decision making was costing 3% of annual revenue in 2018 for a company making $5 billion a year. And since 2018, those things only got worse. So the key question is not anymore like why the employer should care, but how much organizational risk we are willing to normalize before treating burnout as systemic. Furthermore, the Mental Health UK report mentions that over 1 in 3 engineers or workers said that they are not feeling comfortable discussing high stress and high pressure with their manager. So if you're thinking that maybe this is not happening in your team, maybe people are just not comfortable talking about it. And the World Health Organization defines burnout as an occupational phenomenon and has these 3 dimensions. Exhaustion, which is emotional exhaustion. Basically, you are feeling drained from sustained mental effort at work. There might be extra pressure in your personal life as well, but that's separated from this. Cynicism, basically emotional detachment. You no longer care about the result of your work, about who is impacted by that. And you basically have reduced concern about it. And inefficacy, you will have poor performance, you will doubt your abilities, you will have lower productivity, morale, and coping capacity. And if we look at this through an SRE lens, we can see clearly that teams are engineering systems. They have load, work, expectations, interruptions. Then they have capacity, time, cognitive energy, attention, and then they have margin, the buffer between the two. And they have failure modes, and one of them is burnout. But we design software taking into account all the stress factors. However, we don't design our teams as such. And when load consistently exceeds capacity, that margin disappears and burnout comes in. So why don't we detect it earlier? Because we cannot control what we don't observe. You wouldn't run a production database without any metrics, right? So you shouldn't run a team without them either. So step 1, make load visible. Stop guessing and start instrumenting. And here you can think about like cognitive load, and we can just measure like the number of PRs and tickets and context switching across project and tool churn. And we are not doing that in the sense of micromanagement. We are doing that just to understand what the pressure on the employee for context switching is. And then we will have the interruptions. We have the Slack notifications. We have the ad hoc meetings that just turn into like 1 hour long debate. We have fragmented days due to such meetings. We have on-call load, pages, after-hours incidents, increased mean time to recovery, which also signals instability. And we have the emotional load, which is harder to track, but AI can lean into this a bit because it can pick up on maybe review tone or some conversations that, in writing or not, that may be more heated. And the point isn't precision, it's just visibility. And maybe one day, teams will be run with this level of instrumentation. We are not there yet, but who knows? But before getting there, we should start by defining some leading indicators. And if I were to pick 3 of these, I would think of defining a human mean time to recovery, and I would try to measure it through pulse surveys and keep them as simple as possible, 2-3 questions, nothing more, and just try to get that signal 24 hours, 72 hours, or 1 week after an incident. Then you could have verification load, which is basically how much effort goes into reviewing or debugging the AI output compared to actually creating that work. And lastly, the human error budget burn rate. That is how quickly a team is consuming its resilience and recovery capacity. So some practical examples here would be, for sure, for human mean time to recovery, we will probably have an answer of X hours or days. But then for verification load, we can think about, hey, if it takes me 5 hours to build a feature, but with AI, and maybe I'm just like reviewing for 1 hour, then that's okay. But if it takes me half an hour to actually generate that code, but then I spend 6 hours debugging it, then we have a problem. And before adding a new AI tool, if you have this metric, perhaps you should understand why the existing ones were inefficient in the first place and how you can change that. And for the human error budget, if we compute it in this way, essentially, it will be something like if we have 40 hours of planned work and maybe 10 hours of buffer and interruptions and incidents, and we see that these interruptions actually were 8 out of those 10 hours, so we had just 80% of our budget burned, then our team is all right. But if those hours of incidents and extra work are consistently exceeded, then we have a capacity mismatch and we are putting too much pressure on the current team. And to make these metrics and corrections more relevant, we also need redundancy mechanisms. And of course, these are familiar. In software, we eliminate single point of failures. We replicate, we distribute, we add redundancy, but we don't do the same with the human element of the stack. We usually just celebrate heroes and then cry for them when they are on vacation, or maybe even page them when they are on vacation. And knowledge sharing takes also a different dimension with AI, because we should ensure that the critical context that was in someone's perhaps repository clone is shared across the team. And we don't also overly rely in like a single model or a single type of agent, because that domain is changing fast and we don't want to be trapped in something stale. And then the pairing, more than one person should understand the system in real time. But not only that, maybe you can do some pair prompting. Maybe you can share some frameworks that you are using and that you found relevant. And you should also have distributed ownership. So no part of the system should depend on a single person. And just remember that the goal isn't to have hero-driven teams, but to have resilient systems that don't break when one person is missing. And we can do that also by establishing limits. So every system has capacity, right? We won't run something in production at 95, 100% utilization, because we would be on the failure edge. So sustainable systems run at about 70, 80% to absorb spikes, incidents, uncertainty. Without that buffer, small disruptions will create breakdown. So the goal isn't maximum output, it's resilience for our team as well. And we need to do that through that buffer, through that slack essentially, because if we don't have external requests, ad hoc requests, then that will be indeed empty time. And then we should allow for cognitive recovery. There's the article that I linked there from Rise Workplace Being that says that humans should have at least 10 hours per day of rest, which is 42% out of the 24 hours. And that in order to sustain performance and to avoid burnout. And out of those 10 hours, 8 hours you should spend sleeping, and the other 2 hours to definitely not think about work or about other chore that you're doing. We should also enforce circuit breakers, so have hard off-call boundaries. And if we eliminated the single point of failures, then that maybe becomes more achievable. And to have AI throttling, but not in the sense of waiting for AI to say, hey, slow down, you no longer have requests, but for you to actually have no AI blocks in your calendar, where you just schedule work that's better to do by yourself. And that's just to protect your cognitive capacity. So, of course, you can say, but what if I'm an individual contributor and I don't have this impact? Well, you have some impact, and you can start with yourself. And I had this idea recently, actually, after talking to Marianne at the speaker dinner. I've been using Claude for my code, but I can also use it to observe patterns for myself. So I created a small Claude skill to just observe what's the change in my prompting patterns. I'll have a QR 2 slides from now. And essentially the goal for this is to simply see in the variation of the language I'm using and to signal me if I'm getting overwhelmed by these interactions. Of course, this is a rough example. I'm curious to learn what kind of ideas you have from this. So to wrap it up, burnout is a systems failure. Don't take it as an individual problem. If you know someone who's going through it or you've gone through it, I'm sorry for that, but try to keep your hopes up. High performance requires slack, not heroics. you should run your team as you run your systems at 70-80% of that capacity. And boundaries work best when the system enforces them. If you will put that time aside in your calendar, but your colleague does not respect it, then you need to escalate that. So this was it. Thank you. Time is our most precious resource, so I'm very thankful that you invested your time today with me. And please design teams like you design your systems. Here you have 2 QR codes, my LinkedIn, and the GitHub link to that cloud skill. Thank you.